Hey everybody, this is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 with...
Redarrow NWC.
And we're deciding to do our first ever collab. And we're counting down the top 5 best SummerSlam matches. SummerSlam has been around since 1988, and, well, with SummerSlam right around the corner, we thought we'd go back and do our list of the top 5 best matches in SummerSlam history. Now, this is our opinions, and we have mainly been watching these matches recently. These are the 5 that stood out to us when it came to the best matches in SummerSlam history. So, you want to do the honors, Red, or should I start?
You can start.
Alright, my number 5 for the WWF Tag Team Championships from SummerSlam 2000, the first ever TLC match, Edge and Christian, the champions, versus the Dudley Boys, versus the Hardy Boys in the first ever TLC match. This match was epic. This match made an impact on me, just rewatching this match, just how important it was that it set up the TLC formula, that then it would be perfected by the time TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17 a year later in 2001. But this match from SummerSlam 2000 had all 3 teams bring their elemental weapons into play here. The Hardys brought ladders, the Dudleys brought tables, and ENC brought chairs. And look, I'm wearing my Edge shirt right here, since I got this at WrestleMania. But yeah, Edge and Christian has to be my favorite tag team of all time. I would say Edge and Christian has to be my favorite tag team of all time, especially if they were the ones who ended up winning this match. And they won this match in the Hardys' country of North Carolina. They were in North Carolina for this match. This match from SummerSlam 2000 was an epic classic and definitely deserves this spot.
Well, my number 5 shares the same as you. Edge and Christian versus Dudley Boys versus the Hardy Boys for the tag championships from SummerSlam 2000. And again, it was a perfect match.
Yeah, exactly. It was the first ever TLC match, yeah.
Without this match, who knows
how the TLC formula would have gone. But
yeah.
These 6 guys put it all on the line.
Yeah.
Can you believe Christian is still going?
Yeah, Christian's still going now and is champion.
And he's recently become the number 1 contender for the AEW championship.
Yeah, even Edge is still going.
Well, he came out of retirement.
Yeah.
Jeff Hardy's still going, but Devon, though, is retired.
Yeah.
Matt is still going.
And both Dudley Boys are, I believe, done.
No, I think Bubba is or Bully Ray, is in Ring of Honor right now.
But yeah, this match altogether was put together perfectly. All the high extreme moments of
and too many high spots, but in the end, ENC were the ones who retained the titles.
Yeah.
Now, my number 4 is the oldest match on my list. From SummerSlam 1992, we have the British Bulldog versus the Intercontinental Champion Bret Hart, and this was in Wembley Stadium. This was the only SummerSlam to happen overseas from SummerSlam 1992. This was like the British invasion. This was the main event of SummerSlam, and anytime you have the British Bulldog in London, England, main eventing a show, you know it's going to be a great one. And Bulldog and Bret, this whole family feud, you have the family divided on who's going to win this match. You have Bret's sister and Bulldog's wife/widow nowadays, Diana, who's conflicted about who should she side with, her brother or her husband. And everyone else, this match was just an absolute classic. A great wrestling match for the IC title. Definitely one of the best Intercontinental title wrestling matches of all time. I definitely rank it above Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat, though Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage from WrestleMania 3 is still a classic. But this match from SummerSlam 1992 definitely holds its spot as one of the best IC title matches ever to happen. And definitely the best IC title match that ever happened on a SummerSlam. I mean, you definitely can't get any better than Bret Hart, because Bret Hart is Mr. SummerSlam. If Shawn Michaels was Mr. WrestleMania, then Bret Hart is Mr. SummerSlam.
Well, number 4 for me will be Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk for the WWE title at SummerSlam.
Well, the World Heavyweight Championship.
World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam
2009.
And I just love this match. Two good competitors together, even though.
And you had 2 TLC matches back to back, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. And I just love the execution of the match itself with Edge and Jeff,
or Punk and Jeff.
Punk and Jeff.
And this stemmed from Punk and Jeff's, real life hatred of each other. Punk being so straight edge that he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do drugs, and Jeff being someone who, lived on the edge.
Yeah.
He lived life to the fullest.
But
yeah, this was an excellent match and definitely the best of the series of matches they would have in 2009, and plus, they would have a cage match that followed on SmackDown, but what would follow would be the ending of the match, which I will talk about is the aftermath of the match, which I will talk about in my number 2 spot. But now, my number 3 is the only time Hell in a Cell ever took place at a SummerSlam, is The Undertaker versus Edge, SummerSlam 2008 inside Hell in a Cell. This match was an amazing Hell in a Cell match. Originally in my top 5 at this spot was going to be Steve Austin versus The Undertaker from SummerSlam 1998, but that ended up being tossed away for this match. This match I ended up replacing Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. Instead I put Undertaker versus Edge. I mean, even though despite Edge being at a disadvantage, being inside a Hell in a Cell match being foreign to him, he still manages to embrace being inside the cell, having to hold his own with the man who made the cell famous in the first place, The Undertaker. I mean, what part of having Hell in a Cell and The Undertaker inside make a great recipe, But sure, that hasn't always been true with The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell, but The Undertaker is the man who founded the cell. So you can't really have Hell in a Cell without The Undertaker.
Well,
but in the end, it was Undertaker who took the victory over Edge, tombstoning him, and then throwing Edge off of a ladder by a choke slam, and sending Edge through the ring mat.
Yep. Well, my next up, number 3 for me, will have to be Triple H versus Shawn Michaels unsanctioned match at SummerSlam
2002.
This match, I just loved how they put it together with Shawn Michaels coming back after being out for 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years after WrestleMania 14. And, he comes back and he's coming in wearing a tank top and jeans and cowboy boots, and he's facing off with Triple H in a unsanctioned street fight. Yeah. As WWE didn't want to be responsible for what happened in this match.
And I just liked how the rivalry was with Triple H turning on him, because he just...
It started with betrayal, and then it evolved into something more as this whole saga with Triple H and Shawn Michaels went about. And yes, Shawn Michaels versus Triple H is probably one of my favorite rivalries to ever happen in WWE. Practically my favorite rivalry in pro wrestling, next to The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. But this like my friend said, he loved this match, and I do too love this match, but I'll talk about this match more later. So, number 2 was a match he already talked about, and that is CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy, SummerSlam 2009, in a TLC match. This was the only other TLC match where Jeff Hardy, or that the TLC elements were ever brought into SummerSlam, because TLC after SummerSlam 2009 would only be exclusive to the TLC pay-per-view, because the TLC pay-per-view would debut in this year. But Punk and Hardy, you could feel the hatred between both men. You could cut it with a knife and you feel the hatred. The downright hatred that both men feel towards each other. They want to rip each other's heads off. This TLC match had its great moments, but in the end it was CM Punk who ended up beating the Master at his own game. Punk ended up walking away with the title, but he didn't walk away unscathed, because after the match, well, in the aftermath, Undertaker showed up after the lights went out and Jeff Hardy's prone body was gone. Undertaker rose and chokeslammed the hell out of Punk. Alright, so you get to your number 2.
Alright. Well, my next pick, number 2 for me, will be from the 2013 SummerSlam as John Cena versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship.
Oh, and I reviewed SummerSlam 2013 recently.
This match, I loved the storytelling, the storyline.
Of the whole wrestling versus entertainment, how Daniel just thinks John is, entertainment and that he's a parody of wrestling, but Cena proves that, he can go. That he wasn't just Cena was, compared to Daniel, he was a homegrown talent.
Right.
Yeah, he was a homegrown WWE star compared to Daniel Bryan.
But with Triple H being the special guest referee, Daniel Bryan coming out on top, and during the celebration of him winning, Randy Orton coming out to cash in his Money in the Bank contract before...
And it was the second time in SummerSlam history that a cash-in actually happened.
And then Triple H pedigreeing Daniel Bryan and giving Orton the title. He handed it to Randy, and I liked that.
Yeah, and it definitely did its job well to build the whole Daniel Bryan versus the Authority storyline very well. It did its job well to set things in motion. Alright, so before we get to our number ones, we're going to go over some honorable mentions. My first honorable mention, we go back to SummerSlam 1991, which was headlined by a wedding between Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. And this was the second match on the show for my first honorable mention, as we have, for the Intercontinental Championship, Mr. Perfect, the late Mr. Perfect, a.k.a. Kurt Hennig, taking on the challenger, Bret the Hitman Hart. Because in 1991, Bret was in the midst of going single after him and Jim Neidhart parted ways from the Hart Foundation, and now you see these guys go off to be singles competitors. Where Bret had great success as a singles competitor, Jim did not. But that didn't stop this match from being an absolute classic. Hennig went out there with a bad back and still managed to finish the damn match. With Bret winning the IC title in the end, it was a perfect way for, to show that Bret had just arrived as a singles competitor, and that, he would potentially be the next big star in the company, because they were moving away from Hulkamania as the 90s were coming around and Hulkamania was slowly fading out.
Well, my first honorable mention probably won't sit right with some people, but it's from the 2020 SummerSlam of Seth Rollins versus Dominic Rey Mysterio.
Dominic Mysterio, Rey Mysterio's son.
Yeah. I liked this for a debut match for Dominic, his first match in WWE. He did phenomenal.
And yeah, Dominic was no stranger to WWE, as he's appeared on WWE television a lot more times before his official
signing.
Yeah, before his official signing, because, he's appeared on television back in 2005 with the whole Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio storyline, if you've ever looked back on the whole 2005 feud between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio.
I put this as my honorable mention because for his first match, he did absolutely phenomenal.
I kind of just forget about SummerSlam 2020 because it's just such a forgettable show.
Yeah.
Second honorable mention happened a year ago, well, a year before SummerSlam 2020, and that was SummerSlam 2019, Becky Lynch versus Natalya for the Raw Women's Championship. Now, I thought this submission match between Natalya and Becky was really good, and Toronto was such a great crowd, and Canada always is a good crowd in Canada. They were in Toronto, they were in Edge's hometown / Trish Stratus's hometown, but this match for the opening contest between the Irish Last Kicker and the Canadian Queen of Hearts herself, it was a great bout between Natalya and Becky, with with Becky beating Natalya by the end of this with the disarm her. I mean, definitely my favorite match Becky Lynch was in all year. Well, next to her match at WrestleMania, but definitely, this match definitely deserves a spot.
Well, next up for my honorable mention will be from SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton from SummerSlam 2016.
Wow.
I know.
Not a popular choice.
For most people, they didn't like it, but
Many people put AJ Styles versus John Cena over that match any day.
Well, for me, I picked Randy versus Brock because it's a match I've always wanted to see, but it's not in my top 5 because of the execution of the match, of how they...
Yeah, what looked good on paper should just stay on paper.
Yeah. The whole match getting ended by Brock busting open Randy Orton and then just ending the match.
Yeah, Randy was a bloody freaking heap.
It just reminded me a lot of when Roman and Brock were fighting.
Yeah.
And it's just like a redo of that, and I just didn't like it. That's the whole point of it.
My next honorable mention, though, well, speaking of Jeff Hardy, here he is again. From SummerSlam 2001 for the WWF Hardcore Championship, we have Jeff Hardy defending his Hardcore title in a ladder match against Rob Van Dam. And this happened, yes, during the 2001 Invasion, and yes, I know a lot of people hated the Invasion, but, you know, when you look back at 2001, it's not all that bad. I mean, heck, I prefer watching Raw in 2001 over rewatching anything current Raw. Like, I prefer watching 2001 Raw over current Raw, because I hate current Raw. I mean, but this match between Jeff Hardy and Rob Van Dam was more than just about how these two unorthodox styles meshed. They meshed well beautifully in this ladder match, as both knew how to use a ladder very well, and in the end it was Rob Van Dam who took the victory, and I'm glad Rob Van Dam walked away with this. I mean, and Van Dam was the most over guy in the Alliance, so there was that.
Well, my next honorable mention will be John Cena versus Seth Rollins for the U.S. title at SummerSlam.
Well, in a winner-takes-all match.
Winner takes all match
for the WWE and Universal titles.
And then this is where I started...
USA title, I meant, not Universal.
This is where I started getting behind Seth Rollins, because I started liking him as a character as they pushed him more.
I mean, yeah, you cannot deny that Seth Rollins definitely had his moment here, but why I didn't include it in my favorites list is mainly because of the ending with Jon Stewart, because he did it for Flair, because he did it for Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Oh, because he didn't want Cena to tie Ric Flair, because he's being a big baby about it.
That's the whole reason I put it as an honorable mention, but other than that, the match was perfect. Seth and Cena was great.
Alright. So, and my final honorable mention, well, has the same guy in the same main event, but except in different positions, but these are two matches together for my final honorable mention because I couldn't decide which match I liked more. It would be from SummerSlam 1998, The Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship, and SummerSlam 1997 as Champion Undertaker defends against Bret Hart. Now here's Bret Hart again appearing on the honorable mention slot. This time he's sharing a spot. Both of these main events from SummerSlam 1997 and 1998 were great main events. I mean, I love SummerSlam 98 and 97 were both on my... definitely had to be on my list of favorite SummerSlams. Like, when I rewatched SummerSlam 1997 again back in 2020, it definitely had to be in my top 5 for sure. I do plan to do a top 5 favorite SummerSlam pay-per-views list someday, and so does my friend here if we ever do the collab. But yeah, it definitely has to be on the list. And I love the technically soundness of Taker and Bret's match from '97, and Shawn Michaels was the special guest referee, and I loved how it built Shawn and Taker's feud. But then, of course, there was the Taker and Austin match, which also had a spot in my heart for just how how well of a Attitude Era SummerSlam main event it was. Since 1998, we were officially in the Attitude Era by the time 1998 rolled around. Because 1997 was the transitional period, 1998 was the official kickoff point.
Well, my number one has something to do with this title here. The first ever match introducing this title. From SummerSlam, Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor for the Universal Championship.
2016 SummerSlam, okay. I know you and I basically disagree with our number ones, but alright, take it away. Just tell us why.
I put this match because I just like the chemistry that Finn and Seth had.
It was also their first match against each other.
Yeah, first match against each other, and they did phenomenal together. Even though Seth Rollins ended up injuring Finn Balor, but it still didn't stop Finn Balor from taking Seth to the extreme and beating him with one arm.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that, just a few weeks after this, Seth would begin his face turn that he would have until, 2019 when he would, late 2019 when he started doing the whole Messiah gimmick that he's currently doing.
After losing to the Fiend.
Yeah, after he lost to the Fiend, yeah, at not Super Showdown, Crown Jewel. Ugh. Why did they ever have to do Crown Jewel is beyond me.
But I have to put this as my number one because this is what got me into Finn Balor. That match made me go back and watch all his NXT run and everything else of him, and then I just got behind the fact that Finn Balor, and I just like him. He's probably one of my most favorite.
Heck, the first match I ever watched with Sting was his match with Triple H at WrestleMania 31. That's what made me want to go back and watch some of the old Sting matches, and why Sting ended up becoming on my list of my top 20 favorite wrestlers. He's not high above, but he's in the right spot in the top 20.
That's what happened with me with Finn Balor. I did the exact same thing, and he shot right up to my at least top 3 of people in WWE to date.
Alright, now it's time to get on to my number one. Number one, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, SummerSlam 2002 unsanctioned. Like I said, Shawn Michaels versus Triple H is my second favorite rivalry in all of WWE and probably in all of pro wrestling. The 3-year feud between Michaels and Triple H was an amazing storyline. I mean, from betrayal to greed to everything, and how much these guys went from the best of friends to the bitterest of enemies. It was just incredible. And this first encounter at SummerSlam definitely was the great kickoff point we needed for this storyline. And I'm not talking about their little match they had in 97 either, in 1996 and 1997. They only had 2 matches against each other in the 90s, but it's this match here that kind of started the true rivalry between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. This started a great saga, especially the ending. After Michaels beats Triple H via roll-up, Triple H assaults Michaels with a sledgehammer because Triple H, he loves that sledgehammer, and he's manifested this into his character of being the King of Kings, the cerebral assassin. But in the end, it worked in this match's favor to add more to the story, and it definitely set the bar high as the bar continued to rise between the whole storyline between Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Anyway, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3
and Redarrow NWC.
And we'll see you next time. See ya!